Hi, and welcome to another episode of She Leads Biotech, the podcast where we celebrate the achievements of women in the life sciences. Sometimes a career feels less like a straight line and more like a series of bold, thoughtful choices. My guest today grew up doing math in the back seat on family road trips, went on to earn a PhD in statistics and started her career at Eli Lilly, where she was trusted very early on with big, complex responsibilities and cross-functional teams. She never set out to be a CEO, and she doesn't fit the stereotypical mold. Instead, she brings something that this industry desperately needs: a deeply analytical, data-driven mind, combined with genuine humility and servant leadership. Today, she spends her waking hours and quite a few of her dreams focused on one of the most challenging areas in women's health, ovarian cancer, where her team is working to meaningfully extend survival and transform the standard of care for women who urgently need better options. So please welcome CEO of IMUNON, Dr. Stacy Lindborg. Stacy,
Hi, Sharon. It's great to see you.
very good to see you. How are you?
Doing very well. Very
Excellent.
well.
Excellent. Coming to the end of another week.
They're all busy, fulfilling, and stretch me, which is all that I can hope for with each passing week.
Absolutely. So I look forward to diving into little bits of that. But where am I speaking to you from? Where are you based?
I'm today in my home office in a suburb of Boston.
Okay.
We have two offices, one in Princeton, New Jersey, and one in Huntsville, Alabama, where our CMC is. But today, Friday, in my home office.
Right. Okay. Well, welcome from a few states over in New York. But we're still on the same time zone, so that's always good. So I'm really interested to follow your story. I'm really to get into your work. But how did it all start for you? What was it something that you'd always wanted to be involved in bioscience, or did it creep up on you? What was the story?
Yeah, well, if I think back to what ultimately I dove into in college, STEM always came very easy for me, which I really attribute to my father. I don't know that I appreciated it at the time, but we took road trips in the summer, and you had to spend mandatory time in the back seat with dad on the road trip doing math and other STEM topics for next year in the
Wow.
summer times. As a result, it was something I aspired in. And as I got to a place where I was really thinking about how do I apply my formal training, right? We all go deep in areas and we focus, but I really wanted my training to help me tackle and contribute to real problems. So I thought about medical school. After getting my PhD, I ultimately decided biotech was really the perfect combination to really work on and provide, to move forward, to advance issues that our family members, friends, and the broader community are facing. And at the end of the day, one of the main reasons for that is that biotech, biopharm really requires a business case for everything that we're working on.
Yep.
We have to work on meaningful problems where there's unmet need, but we also have to be able to have a significant enough advancement that we're adding value. So it was really kind of evolved very naturally and made it to where I could launch more quickly and do so really fully using the things that I had focused on.
What were your early experiences kind of starting out in your career that you feel shaped the way that you lead and solve problems today?
Yeah, so I had really the true honor of starting my career at Eli Lilly and Company, and I think there's probably a lot that's known about some of the larger companies, but one that's very true of Lilly is they're really exceptional at challenging and thinking about individuals' broader capabilities. Extremely early in my career. In fact, I started working on a product that was the top revenue producer for Lilly after Prozac went off patent. I mean, I'm talking extremely early. I was this new employee. I was offered the opportunity to shepherd and steward the schizophrenia brand, which was something that we wanted
Wow.
to see revenues growing. I had people that were on my leadership team and reporting to me that had the commercial responsibility. The the clinicals, we were looking at new indications and getting new registrations, and then CMC. So I was put into this broad role, and it really caused me to think about, I don't know everything. Clearly, I couldn't know everything. There were many different expertise and depth that's needed. And really, it was about asking good questions, engaging the talent that was, that I was working with,
Yeah.
and ultimately knowing how to translate language. It's so critical. You can have the best idea in the world, but if you can't communicate it to people such that you understand the true value, not just why it's a great idea for you, it really crystallized for me just the natural aspects of leadership, and ultimately that it's not so much about your talent, but it's about what you can do with a team.
And you've got quite a strong background in statistics, haven't you?
That's right. That's right.
How do you feel that background enhances your ability to lead a team?
I think first and foremost, statistics is a part of every single part of our business. And really, you'd be hard pressed to find any industry that's not leveraging data, analytics, and as we think about ultimately predictive inference and really gaining, the ability to think about uncertainty, how you should make decisions as an executive. I mean, it's fundamental. And I think that at the end of the day, it helps you when you have the ability to think about what you have evidence of, it's informing your beliefs, and then ultimately think about benefit, risk, uncertainty, really making sure you're grounded in evidence and not what you want to be the case. I really think that it's core. And unlike, I think, people who don't have the ability to really understand the analytics that produce conclusions, you can be more critical of them, and you can even think about things that you can answer that perhaps you haven't been given yet. So it's something that I think really everybody has advantages. I see it as very central to our business.
And I would say it's even more critical now, that ability to interpret data, particularly if you're speaking to investors and things like that. I know good number of years back when I kind of first started in the life sciences space, and money was being given out like it was candy on the basis of an idea, and that has all changed now. And now it's all about what does the data say, what are the facts and things that come through. So I would imagine having that background made that quite natural for you, right?
It does, and I think it gives me the ability to express my conviction about our product even more. Because for me personally, before I'm going to stand in front of anybody, I have to convince myself I believe it. I'm a critic, and I need to believe it. That's ultimately what leaders should be doing, right? We shouldn't be just, of course, looking. We all want to see products work. But at the end of the day, what we care about is the long term and the impact. It's interesting. I think that when I was first approached by our executive chairman of our board, who was CEO at the time of IMUNON, he actually was intentionally struck by my background for that reason. He told me that. He said, look, I think that you bring an objectivity and a strength that should be very visible to the outside. And it helped crystallize something that I was internally already kind of bringing to the table, but actually an appreciation for a very core value point at a CEO level.
And had you always wanted to be a CEO? Did you always want to lead, or how did that come about?
I think that no, I never had any aspirations to be a CEO. I know that I'm very goal oriented. I'm very driven for impact, not necessarily driven for particular roles. But and I think as I ultimately kind of was offered different positions, again I made a compliment and comment on Lily was extremely good at this, looking at individuals and looking beyond the training and thinking how could we provide growth and really an opportunity and impact the business as a result. So I was given a number of different positions that were really quite broadening. And I think with every role, what I was most interested in is what could I uniquely do in the job? What would I learn? And how could I contribute? And I think that just kind of naturally, and with the desire to add value, if you show up, you do a great job over time, I think people, return and they approach you with opportunities. And that is certainly what I found. And I found myself actually even wondering, I'm so serious about goals that I take on. Like when I was doing a lot of long distance running before I did my first marathon, I really had to decide, did I have the time and the capacity to do it with a busy job? And I had to decide that before I set it as a goal. And similarly, when I was really starting to realize as I was getting closer to C-suite opportunities, there were really only so many jobs that would be relevant, right? When you think about a chief commercial officer, or you can go down the path of the limited set of roles. There are roles that I, could have been very, very well positioned for, but I think there are quite a few that I wouldn't be. And so I had to really reconcile with myself, would I want a CEO role if that were ever a possibility? And I, through that kind of decision making and really reconciling what it would allow me the opportunity to do and then what I could bring to it, I then really came with an open mind when I was offered my first role.
And you're not really, you're a non-typical CEO by your own admission. But what has that kind of taught you about leadership, about identity, opportunity, that sort of thing? What have you learned from your experiences as a CEO?
There probably are, kind of more typical. But one of the things as I was first, kind of grappling with this, is it something I'm even interested in? I had a conversation with a very well-regarded scientist and, inventor. He's co-founded a lot of companies. I reported and worked closely with him while I was at Lilly in a senior role. And his viewpoint, as I was kind of grappling with these questions, his viewpoint was, look, nobody is uniquely positioned for a CE role. In fact, there have been studies that have looked at this, and at the end of the day, everyone has a skill set. And really, at the end of the day, how are you understanding and able to work with the areas that you don't know as well? How do you deal with uncertainty and really things you haven't experienced? Everybody's going through their careers and you're facing things always for the first time, and really about your traits and how you lead, and knowing you need to learn how you can depend and get great advice to move quickly on things that are not your expertise, and even things that you are very close to. How are you challenging and listening and thinking about that you're hearing in your own head and what others are telling you. So I think you're right. I probably have a very unique profile, but it really doesn't need to be the case. I think it probably is a self-selection, bias, that people that are really strong in analytics tend to get their strength of what they bring to the table in the details. They're just as likely to go up to the 50,000 foot strategy level. And in fact, I think there's some really inherent aspects that make analytical skills, very strong in this. But I think a lot of people that go deep into analytics and STEM really enjoy problem solving and being in the details. And what you need and want to be able to do is to really go between, these two arenas.
I guess if that is your area of strength and expertise, the importance is then to surround yourself with, as you mentioned earlier, is those people around you as part of that team that kind of fill in the gaps of the COO who deals with the operations and the CFO who makes sure the finance is there, allowing you as the CEO to steer the ship and take that kind of overview rather than necessarily being stuck in the weeds.
That's right. And there's nothing unique to me in that statement, right? At the end of the day, if instead of me, there was somebody that was really strong from a business standpoint, they wouldn't have the strength in knowing, what does FDA require? How do we translate evidence and confidence in our data? So, everybody will come to the table with things that they're very strong, and then have to really surround themselves. That to me is a sign of a good leader. Surround yourself with good people, rely on them, and seek input, right? Allow it to factor into your thinking. It doesn't mean that you'll follow things that are being shared with you, but it's really critical, I think, to be open-minded and listen to input.
Absolutely. Yeah. Otherwise, you may as well just do it all yourself and then nothing gets done, does it really? Because you're trying to do so much. I mean, obviously, it is a fact that there are still considerably fewer women CEOs in all aspects of industry, not just in biotech. But what would you say, in your experience, what strengths do women constantly underestimate in themselves?
An interesting question. I mean, I've given a number of talks over the years. I've been asked to speak at events that are highlighting, women and strengths, and, some of the data-oriented articles I found very interesting, that women can often underestimate their abilities. If you're applying to a job, and again, this has been documented, which I find so fascinating. You can go to a set of grad students who are there and you can look at grades. There's no reason to believe that, of course, any group from any category, including male, female, should differ. And yet women as a group consistently would underestimate how much they might make in 5 years. That was a very specific question asked. Or even women are much less likely to apply for jobs if they don't meet more of
Yep.
the criteria than men. And so I think and again, that becomes a strength from my viewpoint. I think humility, ultimately, when we end up in roles, I don't come in believing that I'm all knowing. I come in prepared to work, prepared to learn, and knowing that I'll be able to overcome challenges as we step through it. And a lot of that, then allows, it's that, what are you investing to get there, which we all need to do.
Yep.
So maybe it's something that starts out with a more of a challenge for us, but can be leveraged in a way to be a strength.
This week's episode of She Leads Biotech is brought to you by Facilitate, the team behind Advanced Therapies Week, the biggest event for the global cell and gene therapy community. Join over 2,000 leaders in San Diego, February 9th to 12th, for high-value networking, bold ideas, and real connection. Don't miss the Women in Advanced Therapies Congress, a powerful space for women and allies to share stories, insights, and support. Visit facilitate.com/Advanced Therapies Week and use She Leads 20 for 20% off your ticket. That's SHELEADS 20. See you in San Diego. Yeah, that's definitely for, in my real job as a recruiter, that's one of the things I come up against time and time again, where women will, I don't know that I should apply or put myself forward because I don't tick 100% of the boxes. Whereas men, they're like 60%. Oh yeah, let's go for it. But we'll cover that conversation when we get to it. And it's trying to stretch. You're trying to get women to say, it doesn't matter. You don't have to have 100% of it. You just have to have the competencies and the capabilities to get to that. What other strengths are you able to bring? And I think that's definitely inherently in all of the, far more in women than in men, who are much more inclined to just say, yeah, I can do most of that and let's see how we go. Maybe that's something we should learn.
Sharron, one thing that's popping into my head that I think is wonderful to reflect on. So as I was going through, I was at Lilly for 16 years and was offered different positions. I was asked to apply for my first administrative role. It would have taken me from, Lilly had technical letters and administrative letters, which has continued to evolve. But I was asked to apply, and I went in for this interview panel, and I was asked, why do you want this job? And I was honest with them. I said, I'm not actually sure I do. I'm here to learn. And I ultimately decided I didn't want to go that path, but it was interpreted by some of the guys that I worked with as a career limiting move. And I said, at the end of the day, it was very clear to me that I wanted to take positions for specific reasons, not just to catapult myself in a direction that some might say was going to be longer progressing or not. And It ultimately really proved, even in my time at Lilly, I went far further in job experience and opportunity and what I was approached by than I would have if I had just said, well, I'm going after this as success, taking on, a formal administrative job sooner versus waiting. And the first job that I took actually allowed me to influence a broad set of the portfolio. And that's why I was interested in it. Then I could learn and contribute even more rather than just an entry level.
Right. Great. Well, what I want to talk about now, I know, is your passion. I know we've talked about you spend every waking hour, even in your dreams, I believe, on this topic. And it's a big part of the work. I guess it's the work that you're doing at IMUNON, right? Talk to me about it. What is it?
Yeah, so we're working and have been for decades. Immunon previously was Celsion, and we've been focused on cancer for the existence of our company. And what's really very exciting with the technology platform that is the lead and the most advanced for us is really targeting and using our bodies an immunotherapy, novel immunotherapy using a DNA plasmid that travels into the cells of women that have ovarian cancer. We administer it into a catheter directly into the peritoneal cavity where the cancer is, and the uptake is allowed by using a synthetic polymer that allows it to go into the cell, and then our bodies start producing powerful cancer-fighting cytokines that are well known, well established, and we're seeing really phenomenal, really unprecedented clinical results. So we're moving as rapidly as we can. There is an unbelievable unmet need. The standard of care hasn't changed in 30 years. So women, as they're diagnosed, they often are diagnosed in late stage because symptoms are nonspecific. And by the time they really, if they've been talking to a physician about their symptoms or not, really the time that it gets to, imaging and other things that confirm that there actually is a cancer that needs to be sought, more than 80% of women are actually diagnosed in stage 3 or stage 4. There's an immense urgency. We're moving rapidly, and we're in phase 3 trials.
That's fabulous news for me. I have a cancer phobia. I think it's called carcinophobia. I have no idea, like most phobias, of where it came from. But literally for me, from sort of early teens, I guess, was very much, I don't know what cancer I've got, but I've got it. It just hasn't been diagnosed yet. My doctors, thank the Lord for the NHS in the UK, because they would give me test after test just to subside the panic. But the one test that I could never really get that would, block out the fear was on ovarian cancer. And so for me, for many, many years, became the focal part of my obsession. As much as the doctors were helpful, there was blood tests to pinpoint certain things, or pelvic sonograms and things like that. But as you say, it's still that one area of cancer that by the time it's for sure that's what it is, it's at very late stage. But there are lots of progressions that are even being made at late stage, aren't there?
That's right. So, we're choosing to focus. We chose to focus on the frontline diagnosis, and treatment space. So, which is actually unusual.
Yep.
If you want to say, is there an easier path towards understanding if a drug can prove sufficiently such that it'll be approved by a regulator? If you go to a later stage, including even maintenance therapy, right after the frontline treatment period, you'll look at the protocols require a response. And so they're taking women into a study that have responded to chemotherapy. They've had surgery, so the burden of cancer has been lowered substantially. They are no longer in such a fragile position, which often happens. We have some women, even one in the phase 3 trial, which started this summer, who was so sick. Unfortunately, she wasn't even strong enough to endure chemotherapy and was put immediately in hospice. So it's a reality that, to some degree, if you have the benefit of knowing who will respond to chemo and they've already responded, then showing a benefit on top of that on the ongoing standard of care, it removes noise, right? It is definitely an easier population to study. And so a lot of people start there. But we really understood from an immunotherapy standpoint, we believed that we would get the strongest benefit from our treatment in a person who has not been immune compromised because of the treatment, surgery, and other things that would dampen the immune system, in addition to knowing that this is the place where you can have the biggest effect on these women's lives. If you can move the course slow down or even halt. So cancer, really, for any therapeutic, the earliest that you can start a treatment, and we see this far beyond,
Yep.
oncology, but it is the place to start. And so we took a bold move, and we're in our fourth trial that's targeting frontline ovarian cancer. And, at the end of the day, as I said, we have shown what nobody else in all of ovarian cancer, not just immunotherapy, but there's never been a trial in frontline that's shown an improvement in the overall survival of women. And ours is 13 months over the standard of care. So in our trial, based on under 6 months of treatment with IMUNON plus chemotherapy, which is the standard of care, we see women living over a year longer than those who only got the standard of care. So it frankly was a bold move. It was a risky move. There were
Yep.
all kinds of reasons why it made sense, but we're really delighted because if we now can replicate in phase 3 what we see in phase 2, we will be able to transform the standard of care.
Well, I mean, certainly working in this space has helped me because of the work of companies like yours and seeing in not just in ovarian cancer or just, in all of the kind of treatment areas and neurology and all of those, seeing the work daily that you guys turn up and do and to drive these treatments and hopefully one day cures to people has been a real help to me and I'm sure other people like me that hear of these stories of development. So thank you for that. Because I think the last count, sort of 5 years plus survival rate with ovarian cancers, now about, is it 49%? Is
It's
that about right?
the latest statistics that I've seen is under 40% get
Okay,
to the 5-year point. And,
right.
you know,
And
um,
that's not changed, has it?
it
It's
really
not changed
hasn't.
in years.
It really hasn't. 20,000. I mean, there's some positive things, I think just broadly to think about, it's declared an orphan disease. So that's really important is the context of really what's the likelihood that I or you or any other woman in the US could be diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And when we look at the 20,000 new cases every year, there are out of the 174 million women that live in the US, we're really talking about a rate that's less than 1% that are diagnosed. So it is a critical diagnosis, but at the end of the day, it's a very low probability event in terms of being diagnosed with ovarian cancer.
And that's why it's still considered an orphan disease because of the numbers behind it.
That's correct.
Doesn't make it any less critical, though.
No, and certainly very critical for those that do receive the diagnosis.
Absolutely.
And I think second to this is with progress, you'll see that diagnostics, there's an incentive then for diagnostics to come. And I think we see this consistently. As you have the ability to change the treatment course, what we can hope for is that we'll have more sensitive ways and less invasive ways to diagnose cases of ovarian cancer sooner. And I would expect that to happen. So, yeah.
Yeah. So good future there for that. So what's next for you? Obviously, you're very involved in what you're doing at IMUNON. What do you see as the future for the care that you guys are doing? Obviously, the trials that you're already going through, and then what does the future look like for Stacy Lindborg?
My future and what I'm laser focused on right now is getting a product approved for ovarian cancer.
Yep.
So we just started the phase 3 trial in July of this year. Phase 3 trials typically are quite long and expensive, and I'm really proud of what our company has been able to bring forward. We're expecting to have all of our sites activated by the end of next year, to have all patients enrolled within 3 years. And then we have a really creative design that takes advantage of information we learned in phase 2. There's a group of patients that respond even more than the overall all-comers group. And we have the ability to formally test at 2 different interim time points. If we see that effect, we have criteria laid out that would the FDA has agreed to, that we would then file and register. So there's no question in my mind that's we're very, very focused on this, and we're really This is one of the aspects that's really exciting about being in a biotech company. The nimbleness that's required, ultimately gives you flexibility, allows you to really, you need experienced people who've been around the block lots of times, and you can move unbelievably quickly. So, we're from the point of time we had the trial design finalized to patient enrollment. This is typically 30 weeks or longer by benchmark data of, of the broader community. We did that in 15 weeks
Wow.
instead of 30. We are exceeding expectations in our enrollment. We have forecasts that are ultimately aligning with the big picture of what we want to accomplish, and we're exceeding those. We've already enrolled and treated patients the count that we wanted by the end of the year, which is really good. And then the piece which is important is then thinking about how we're managing all of this, and then looking to the longer term strategy of the company, but not being distracted from that in the short term.
If you were, as you bring people in to the company, what is the culture? What would you look for and expect to see in people that were coming into IMUNON?
So the biotech world has very clear expertise. Actually, by FDA, we're expected to have resumes on file. There would be roles that are expected, whether they're in-house or you use expertise outside. We're obviously very focused so that we can maintain our cost and really manage cost well. But I would say we're very careful with what positions we move after, and then we're expecting great depth and talent. But on the culture side, what I'm personally looking for, my own leadership style is a servant leadership, which I believe humility, we've talked a little bit about that,
Yep.
is very critical. And I think it actually ends up with phenomenal and important business advantages. So when you think about humility as a catalyst for growth, it is a really critical. You're allowing alternative viewpoints to be brought forward. You have constructive debate. You're focused on removing barriers so that our teams can move forward quickly. And we're really focused. We actually just had a session last week on the importance of remaining clear and aligned with our vision.
Yep.
So near term, we want to transform the standard of care for frontline ovarian cancer. And when we remain aligned on that, it helps us with no matter what we face and what we tackle. We remember why we're working hard. And even one thing we do as a company, each week I send out a question and ask my team to reflect on what's the single biggest thing you could move forward this week that advances us towards our goals.
Right.
And to really think about that long term, but breaking it down into what do I need before I have my end of day on Friday? What can I do that's going to have the biggest effect? And that is something that really then has to be line of sight priority. Make sure you order from highest priority down, not the easiest thing in the world. Don't just sit and clear out your inbox. Emails are important, but we really need to be thinking about, greatest impact and moving us forward.
Fantastic. Yeah, great piece of advice there. Well, listen, Stacey, I can't believe how quickly the time has gone. So I really appreciate the time that you've given us today. Just one last question for you. If you could leave our listeners with one lasting message on leadership, what would that be?
I think I'll go back to where you started, Sharron. You justly said that I'm thinking all the time about our business, and it goes back to the impact that we can have. I would say that our data and what we've generated very rigorously conducted trials, and our data, it gives me hope. It is something that, when we think about never before seen overall survival benefits, it positions us and just such an incredible opportunity to have transformative impact in a very underserved area. So it's I think we have to continue to think it's not about size of a group or ultimately, when we think about different characteristics that maybe we would focus on, but it's about bold, patient-focused innovation. And I think that's one of the most amazing things about being in this industry.
And what you've just said gives carcinophobics like me all across the world great hope. So Thank you. And I wish you and the company every continued success and look forward to following the progress that you make. But for now, Stacy Lindborg, thank you so much for joining us and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Sharron.
Take care. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for joining me for this episode of She Leads Biotech. If today's story inspired you, subscribe, follow, and comment, because when one woman's voice is heard, many more find theirs. Until next time, stay curious, stay courageous, and keep leading.